Hey, what's up you guys? So today we're going to go ahead and go over how to prep your arrows to be tournament ready. I said I was going to do an arrow prep video on all of the shafts that were in my last Black Eagle arrows video. So we're going to go ahead and do the Revelation 320s today. It should be a pretty quick video. I'm just going to briefly go over how to choose your arrow length. And then we're going to talk about spine indexing, checking the spine of your arrows. Also, we'll talk about how to choose the either left or right helical / offset of your arrow, and then I'll probably install tips and nock bushings and nocks. So it should be a pretty quick video, so if you're interested, stick around and we will get into it. Step 1. So the first thing that I do is I'll go ahead and put the arrow on an arrow spinner. I'll spin the arrow, determine which side has the most wobble, and then I will cut off of that side instead of the other side so that I can decrease the amount of wobble that's coming off of the arrow. If both sides wobble the same, then I'll just cut an even amount off of both sides. Alright guys, so choosing the actual length of your shafts, the best way that I've found to do this is to go ahead and use 6 of your first dozen, especially if you know you're going to be shooting those arrows for a long period of time, like over the course of the next 1.5 to 2 years, and you're going to buy multiple dozens of these arrows. I would just take 6 of the first dozen that you get and cut them all at different lengths. You want to make sure you're still within your spine ratio that you had for your bow's poundage and your draw length and your arrow weight and all that, but you want to have it within that but broken up into subsections. So you're going to have basically, say your shortest arrow is 28 inches, you're going to extend the next arrow to 28.5, and then the next arrow after that to 29, and you're going to shoot all of them and see how they group the best. You might waste a couple arrows because it's not guaranteed that your shortest arrow is going to be your more accurate or forgiving arrow, but it's worth it in the long run because you know that you're going to be shooting the absolute best setup that you can. So what we're going to do from there is we're going to go ahead and take a squaring tool and we're going to go ahead and square all of the arrows up on both sides of the shaft. Alright, so now that we got that done, we're going to go ahead and take our arrows over to the spine tester and we're going to index all of our arrows based off of the spine. Alright guys, so we are getting into the spine testing portion of this video, and I actually just recorded it and it is a super long section, so I'm not going to use that whole video in this video because I want to keep this video on track with how I actually prep my arrows to get them ready for a tournament. If you want to see that whole video unedited of these arrows, I will leave a tag somewhere in this video so that you can go watch that. But for this, I'm going to keep it kind of short and sweet and to the point of how I actually prep my arrows to be tournament ready. Alright, we're at the spine tester. We're going to go ahead and move the camera so you guys can actually see the gauge on this spine tester as we test the arrows so that you guys can see how consistent these arrows are, which is why I shoot them now. So we'll go ahead and move the camera and then we'll get started. Okay, so we got the camera moved so you guys can see the gauge. We're going to go ahead and throw our weight on each of these spines and we're going to see how close they are to a 350 spine, and then we are also going to check and see where our strong side of each of the arrow spines are, and then we're going to mark that so that whenever we're setting up for a fletching job we know exactly how to fletch the arrow so the spine is facing whichever direction that we choose. Okay, so it's going to be 0. Throw the weight on. 1, 2, 3, 345 to start with. So it looks like 345 is going to be the strongest point on the shaft. So we'll go ahead and mark that location. 1, 2, 3, right at 344. So we'll go ahead and mark that. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the strongest point of that one's 345. 1, 2, 3. So looks like 349. 1, 2, 3. 346. 1, 2, 3. Looks like 349 for the last one. 4 points of deflection different per shaft, and you can always pick your best half dozen for tournaments. So if you have 3 that are at 349 and 9 that are at 345, then you can pick all the 345s that you're going to use for a tournament. That way your arrows are exactly the same going into a tournament. Alright guys, so we are moving in on the end of this video. We're going to go ahead and go over installing nock bushings and points. So let's go ahead and install our target points first. I use hot melt on everything that I do on my arrows except for fletching. I used to use super glue on my points and it was a nightmare if I ever had to remove points. I have found that hot melt works just as good as super glue when it comes to adhesion, and it's way better for removing points if you need to. All right, so when you apply the hot melt to your target points, especially if you have target points with breakaway ends, like if you're gonna use a full 120 grain tip like this one is without breaking the ends off, you wanna make sure that you fill in each one of these troughs with as much hot melt as you can, because that's gonna help your adhesion. And then also there's little lines on the inside here too that you wanna make sure that you get filled up really well with hot melt. So we're gonna go ahead and heat up one side of our hot melt. All right, so when you apply this, you wanna go ahead and be super generous with how much you put on there. All right, so now that we got our tip covered in hot melt, we're gonna go ahead and take one of our arrow shafts, put the end of it in the shaft, and then just reheat up the hot melt slightly, okay? All right, so once you get your point pushed in, you'll have something like this at the end. That's okay, just let your arrow dry, and here in a couple minutes, we'll peel that away. All right, so once you have all your tips installed and the donut ring around your tip from the hot melt is dried and cool, you're gonna go ahead and just push with your thumb on the edge of it all the way around. So just run your hand around it, push, and then it'll slide right off and it will be super clean and ready to shoot. And then with these, you can save these and make a hot melt ring like this, and we will use that on our nock bushings. The reason you want to use this and not this on your nock bushings is to save this for your tips, because you cannot use this on your tips. If you use this on your tips, you will lose tips for sure, because it's used hot melt, so the properties in it are different after being used, and once you heat it up again, it just doesn't adhere correctly and you'll lose tips. If you don't have one of these, it's okay to use good hot melt. I just don't like to if I don't have to. Okay, so once you got it just heated up enough to apply, you're gonna go to the very end of your shaft, and then you're just gonna barely touch it and then pull away and let it wrap around the shaft. So you're not putting a whole lot of hot melt caking it on there. You're just putting enough so that the nock bushing will have something to adhere to. You're gonna just push it on, and then just like the tip, you will have a little bit of excess, and that's okay. You're just gonna let it cool off. Once it cools off, you can just peel it right off. so we're gonna go ahead and peel off the excess. All right, so that's pretty much it. We got all of them installed. So now we're gonna go ahead and install some nocks. All right, so when you're installing your nocks, you wanna make sure that you go ahead and install your nock in whatever orientation you want it to be from your spine indicator. So what I mean by that is if you want the spine, strong side of the spine to be up, then go ahead and place it to where it's up on the nock. If you want it to be left, right, down, whatever it is, just to orientate your nocks so that it matches that on all of your shafts before you do the next step. All right guys, so the last thing to do is to take your bow and the arrows that you just built and get about 3 feet away from the target. You don't want to be any further than 3 feet-ish because you don't want the arrow to be able to spin very long. So you want to shoot pretty much point blank at the target, and then what you're going to do is you're going to look at the mark that you made for the strong side of your spine, and you're going to see which direction that mark moved. So if it moves left, then you're going to want to put a left helical on your veins. If it moves right, then you're going to want to put a right helical on your vein. That way the veins don't have to do any extra work when the arrow leaves the bow to get the arrow corrected and start spinning in its natural way. All right guys, well that is pretty much it. That's how I prep all my arrows for target archery. A couple things that I didn't talk about that I want to touch on real quick is arrow weight and speed. For target archery, I really don't care about those that much because you're at 55 yards, 50 meters. Everybody's shooting the same exact distance every single shot. So I actually want my arrows to weigh a little bit more for that because it helps with wind drift and things like that. And speed doesn't really help you a whole lot because you're not judging yardage. You don't really have to worry about the things that you worry about in 3D archery and target archery. So I don't really focus on speed or arrow weight too much on that, other than trying to make sure that my arrow weighs at least 450 grains. But other than that, that's pretty much everything that I do. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope that this video helps somebody out there out. If you don't mind, please do like, share, subscribe, comment, do all that fun stuff. And then also save the video to your watch later list. That way the next time that you're building arrows, you can refer back to this video and follow along with it. Thank you again, and I'll see y'all next time.